Hi everybody, and welcome to Math 1350, Introduction to Statistics. My name is Lane McConnell, and I'm going to be your instructor for this course this semester. I want to use this video to introduce the idea of statistics to you a little bit, and more importantly, go over the expectations and formats, and even just navigate the homepage of the course. So I want to start with that here. I'm on the homepage for the course in Brightspace. You probably had to go through this very page to get to the video that you're currently watching. But I do want to point out while we're here, my profile information on the right-hand side. It includes my email address, which is probably your best way to get in touch with me if you want to ask a question or just reach out for help. And it also has my office hours, both the time and a link to the Zoom meeting where we'll be holding our virtual office hours on Mondays from 10 to 11 a.m. I want to go to the syllabus to go over all the details of the course. To navigate there and to navigate Brightspace in general, if you're unfamiliar, start by clicking on the coursework button and clicking content. And that'll bring me to a page that looks like this. You'll notice on the left-hand side, there are a ton of different links. We're going to be using these throughout the semester. This one, for you guys, you won't have this one visible, but the rest of them will all be sitting right there. And I'm going to start on this top one, the overview and syllabus. So if you're not already there, click on that one, and you can scroll down through all this information and go to the actual syllabus, which is right here. To make it a little bit easier for us to see, let me just bring it up as a PDF so it's a little bit bigger. So this is the syllabus. It contains the same information that was on that initial page in my profile information that I showed you, including my name and my email address, as well as those office hours. And it includes some other information as well. So let's go ahead and go through it. The first thing that it gives us is a brief description of the course. And it uses a bit of statistical jargon in here, some technical terms. The main thing that I want you to take away as far as the overview of this course, and this is going to be something that I will hopefully try to reinforce time and time again throughout the semester, is the idea that statistics really has kind of two components. The first component, what I usually refer to as statistics, is backwards looking. And what I mean by that is statistics tries to come up with ways to describe or summarize data that's already been collected in the past, right? So the events have already occurred, data was already collected, and we're now using statistics to try to synthesize that data, but it is backward looking at things that have already happened. The second component is going to be probability, which is forward looking. So probability uses some ideas and rules often that are derived from those backwards looking statistics that are used to try to make predictions about things that haven't happened yet. And really this whole course is going to be sort of focused on the bond between these two concepts. So to put it briefly, we'll start by looking backwards at different types of data and how we can collect data. Then we'll talk about how to synthesize and summarize that data and work our way into trying to take that data to come up with some rules about how we think things work. And then we'll start to apply those rules in the forward-looking direction to try to come up with probabilistic approaches to trying to predict the likelihood of certain events. So we'll be bridging backward-looking, things that have already happened, coming up with rules about how we think things work, and then applying those rules in a forward-looking, probabilistic manner to try to make guesses about what we think will happen. Big picture, that's the most important takeaway from this course. So I just wanted to say that here, and again, I will reinforce that in the videos throughout the semester. As we go through the syllabus, we'll hit these student learning outcomes. They're much more detailed and even more jargon, more technical terms, description of the things we'll be covering. If you look at them now, it's probably a waste of your time. A lot of terms you may not know what they mean yet, but as the semester progresses, we'll be covering all of these topics and you'll be learning what all of these terms mean. So for now, I'm going to just skip it, but if you ever want to go back and look at any of the topics that we've covered or use them to try to help you as you're studying for exams, make sure you didn't miss any important topics, this is maybe a good place to reference. The part you probably care more about is the text and materials for the course. So we're going to be using an ebook by the authors Navidi and Monk, highlighted right here. And we're going to be using it with a software system called Alex. So this ebook has already been paid for. The math classes or the math department at CNM, along with a bunch of the other departments, have started to move towards something called an inclusive access model. So when you registered for the course, the cost of this textbook access and this Alex access was included in that registration fee. So you should not have to pay again, and you should have access to it from day one. So if you want to get to this ebook, you'll be accessing it through Alex. Alex is a software system, and there's a whole video dedicated to that if you continue on through the introduction section of this module. But to summarize, it's basically going to be the place that we will access the ebook. We will initially we'll take a real quick initial knowledge check at the beginning of everything that will allow us to sort of gauge our level of understanding of some of the supportive math, the types of algebra, equations of lines, things that are going to be the math that's going to be relevant throughout the semester. So it'll gauge your understanding of those and give you some practice problems if you think that would be helpful. And then primarily we're going to be using Alex for our homework assignments. So we will have sets of homework assignments from every section of the textbook assigned on and due on a weekly basis, and Alex is the place that we will go to access those. So I'll show you that maybe in just a little bit. If you're somebody that really likes a hard copy of the textbook, you can purchase basically a loose leaf version for 20 or 30 bucks at the bookstore, but it's absolutely not necessary. Just get it if you're one of those people that really likes to have a hard copy. My hope is that if you watch the videos that I provide throughout the semester, for the most part, the textbook won't be one of your necessary or at least not one of your big resources that you have to use a lot throughout the semester. It's certainly useful. It's got some good information in there, but hopefully you can get 95% of what you need just from my lecture videos. And a lot of people might not ever have to even open the ebook. The next topic that I want to point out here, the next resource that you're going to need for this class is a big and kind of annoying one. So for exams in this class, we're going to be using a proctoring software called Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor. If you've taken an online math class at CNM recently, you may have already used this. To put it bluntly, it's sort of an invasive piece of software that's going to allow us to record you via your webcam and your microphone as you take an exam to make sure that nobody's cheating. It's not something that we as instructors particularly like using, but in order for our courses to transfer to other institutions, proctoring is a requirement, and this is really the only reasonable way to do proctoring in an online course. If you object to using it, that's totally fine. Let me know. We have optional ways for you to work around this, where basically you can instead come to campus and take the exams on campus if you don't want to have to use the lockdown browser and monitor and record yourself taking an exam, in your home or in your office or something like that. So just reach out to me in advance if you're uncomfortable with the idea of using Respondus Lockdown Browser, and we can make arrangements for you to take the exams on campus. One other requirement is our graphing calculator. And you'll notice I put it as a required option here. This will allow you to have a scholarship pay for it if you're on like a GI Bill, or if you're a dual credit, dual enrollment student and getting both college and high school credit for this. Your high school should pay for this calculator if you don't already have one. That said, it isn't strictly required. And what I mean by that is, if you have an older model, so a TI-83, for example, that is totally fine to use instead. If you have another brand of graphing calculator, HP makes some, Casio makes some, As long as it's a graphing calculator, it should have the statistics functionality that we're going to be using throughout this semester. If you don't want to get any calculator, that is also a possibility. And the reason that I'm trying to make it so flexible is because these graphing calculators are expensive. Buying one of these TI-84s new is going to run you anywhere from probably $100 to $140, depending on what model you get, if you can find a sale, things like that. So I'm trying to give as many workarounds as possible. My recommendation is to either borrow one if you know somebody that has one and is willing to let you borrow it. Again, if you have an older model, that also works, or if you can borrow an older model. And as an alternative, you can also come into campus at C&M and go to the libraries and rent a calculator. And I believe their policy is you go into the library, you bring your C&M ID, and you basically exchange it for a calculator. And I think you can keep the calculator for up to 24 hours, but I'm not 100% sure. They've changed that policy over the last couple of semesters, so I'm not sure if that's still the case. That would be my recommendation so that you can use it on exams. In the meantime, on homeworks, I've got some links in the syllabus here to a couple of other options that'll allow you to work around using, basically, they'll allow you to work around having to use a graphing calculator by giving you an app that emulates the graphing calculator. So if you want one on Android, there's an app called Calc84. There's a link here in the Google Play Store. If you have an iPhone, there's another one called Graphen Calc83, and there's the link to that app in the Apple App Store. In both cases, I think they cost anywhere from $3 to $6 or something like that. So they're a lot cheaper than an actual graphing calculator. And that would be my recommendation for those of you that don't want to buy an actual graphing calculator. Download the app, use that for the homework and throughout the semester. And then for exams, because I am not allowed to let you use your phone during an exam, instead of using the app, you can go into the library and check out an actual graphing calculator just for use on the actual exams. It's nice these apps are laid out in such a way that the buttons should all be familiar, the layouts are familiar, because they're identical to the actual graphing calculators. So that should be a good option. As a last resort, you can also send me an email. I have a few spares, and if you're willing to come into campus and pick one up from me to take for overnight to take an exam, that could be an option as well. If you have any more questions about the calculator throughout the semester, send me an email and we'll try to discuss that as much as possible. But this is your best option. Using a calculator in this class will make everything much, much easier. That said, on the exams, if you really don't want to do anything related to calculators, I will throughout the semester be showing you how to do a lot of the calculations in Excel. And on the exams, there will be a built-in spreadsheet in that Respondus lockdown browser that will allow you to use much of the same functionality that you learn in Excel, and you can do some of the problems that way. That said, their spreadsheet's a little bit wonky. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend a graphing calculator instead. As we go further down, course requirements, attendance. This is an online class. Just stay caught up with everything, but I'm required to keep these sections in here. So I don't typically drop students for lack of participation or lack of keeping up. That's going to be on you. Make sure if you're falling behind, you stay on top of those drop dates and all of that. Speaking of those drop dates, I have them listed here in the syllabus. The last day you can drop without taking a W, in fact, you even get a refund, is January 23rd. So it's basically like you never took the class. You can drop with a W or change your grading option as late as March 24th, which is going to be about a month, less than a month before the class ends. So you should have a pretty good sense of where you stand in the class. We'll have already taken and gotten back an exam at that point. You'll have a good sense of where the homework's at. So you should have a good sense of where your standing is when that deadline rolls around. C&M has their COVID policy. It's not really relevant to most of you because, again, most of you are not going to be coming to campus, but maybe read through that section if you plan on coming to campus to to take the exams at the assessment center. But otherwise, no worries about any of that. This is all more for in-person stuff. The last section that you're going to probably care a lot about is the grading policy and the way that the class is going to be structured in terms of your grade. So I mentioned that ALEX software before. That ALEX homework is going to be due every week on Tuesdays, basically before midnight, and it's worth a huge chunk of your grade, 30%. You'll notice, in fact, it's worth the same amount. Your homework is worth the same amount as your 2 midterm exams combined. So don't slack on the homework. Keep up with it. I've tried to keep it a reasonable amount, under 10 problems or so per section. I would expect, depending on how fast you work, I have students that finish the homework in 30 minutes every week. I have students that take 5 or 6 hours every week. That's sort of the ballpark that you should be thinking about as far as the homework goes, depending on how fast you work and how quickly you pick up this information. If you find yourself taking much, much longer than that, get in touch with me and I can try to find ways to help you speed up your process or more strongly utilize the technology like the graphing calculator. There's going to be a lot of calculations that if you do them by hand, they take an hour. And if you do it on the calculator, it takes 30 seconds. And I'm going to be encouraging you to utilize that technology. Utilize the graphing calculator and Excel, and I'll be showing you how to do that throughout the semester. So as far as the homework's concerned, and then again on the exams, utilize the technology. I don't want you to be doing calculations by hand. There's a small participation grade. We're going to have 1 or 2 discussion posts this semester, not a ton, because I always hated those. We're going to have a syllabus quiz, things of that nature. So that'll be included in the participation section. I mentioned the exams. We have 2 midterms. They occur, I want to say, in week 6 and then in week 11 of the semester. Those exams are going to be worth 15% each. We'll have a end of semester project, so probably I think in week 12-ish, shortly after the second exam, you'll have access to this project. It'll be worth 10% of your grade. It's not too difficult and hopefully not too time consuming. I would expect most students when the project rolls around to be able to get it done in less than maybe 4 or 5 hours. And then lastly, we will have a final exam during the last week of class, and that'll be worth 25% of your grade. As far as details about each of these things, going back to the homework, if you get busy and you get a 0 on an assignment, it's not the end of the world. I have it set up so that you can turn in homework assignments late, past the due date, for 75% credit. So it's basically a 25% off. And I also have it set up so that as long as you maintain an 80% average on the homework, so you don't need to get 80s on every single assignment. You can get 0s on some as long as you get enough 100s to balance that out. But if at the end of the semester your homework average in ALEX is above an 80%, I will round it all the way up to 100% and give you full credit on the homework at the end of the semester. So this will allow you to skip just individual problems that are pesky. There's going to be a few throughout the semester you'll see where maybe we have to do some plotting, and the plotting tool in ALEX is kind of wonky and it can be very tedious. So don't worry about skipping in a problem now and again or turning an assignment in late now and again. Just don't make it a habit. You can still get 100% credit on your homework as long as you maintain an 80% average overall. Another caveat, talking about the exams. When exams roll around, you will be allowed a page of notes for each of the midterms. So basically an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, single-sided, with whatever you want to put on there, formulas, definitions, examples, whatever. So you'll be allowed a one-sided sheet for each of the midterms, and then you will be allowed a double-sided sheet for the final exam, or you can even just recycle your 2 single-sided sheets if you prefer. And I mentioned this before, if you don't want to use that Respondus Monitor and Lockdown Browser, that proctoring software, just let me know in advance and we can set you up so you can take the exams on one of CNM's campuses and avoid having to use that proctoring software. Lastly, there's some additional announcements that are kind of built into all the syllabi. Most of these, again, have to do with people on campus, not to waste paper and where you're allowed to smoke and all that stuff. The only part that is maybe worth mentioning is accessibility and accommodations for students with disabilities. If you have accommodations formally provided through the Disability Resource Center here on campus, just let me know as soon as possible. I do get warnings automatically when you register with the DRC, but let me know if you plan on wanting to utilize anything or to describe the specifics of whatever accommodations you need when it comes to exams and all that stuff. So basically, just keep me in the loop if there's anything you want to utilize as far as that goes. The very last thing is we have a week-by-week quick summary of sort of the topics that we'll be covering, when the exams are. I also have a much more detailed version of this if you actually click back into our website here. If I go back up over here, there will be in this first Getting Started module. This is where you'll need to go. In this Getting Started module, this is where you'll want to go. You're already in here because you're watching this video. But as you scroll down, here's a video on how to use Alex. Here's that syllabus quiz. And I also have, where did I put it? Oh, here it is, the course calendar, which gives you a little bit more detailed look at, if I can get it to open here, if it'll go, there we go. More detailed look on a week-by-week basis of basically when the modules open, when homeworks and discussion posts are due, when exam reviews are going to occur, when exams will be available to you, all that stuff. So this is another good resource if you want to print it out and keep track of exactly where we are in the course of the semester. But overall, utilize these Getting Started section to kind of familiarize yourself with the page. And then I just want to point out a few important things over here on this side. The learning modules are going to open on a weekly basis. These are going to be the important place to go that will give you everything you need as far as the content for the course goes. So it'll lead you to a page that summarizes what we'll be covering. It'll give you a checklist that will give you all of the tasks that need to be completed in any given week, including links to all the lecture videos. And then it'll give you any sort of discussion posts or links to the Alex homework that we need to do as well. And we can go through all of those on a weekly basis. Similarly, if you just know you need to get straight to Alex, you can access Alex through the same thing. On the left-hand side, there's a module called Alex. If you click on that one and click this link, it'll take you into your Alex page. There we go. No, thank you. So it'll bring you to your page, and it should look vaguely similar to what you're seeing here. It'll have upcoming assignments, and it'll give you a sense of sort of what topics are going to be covered in the next week or so. So that's what it'll all look like. If you have any other questions along the way, send me an email and let me know. But otherwise, good luck with everything. And hopefully this semester goes smoothly for all of us. Cool. Well, take care. Good luck, everybody, and see you on the other side.